let's just go by alphabetical order. And then on YouTube, I'll go ahead and just cut up each one individually so people can click on them and get mad at the team individually instead of having to sit through an entire division. Arizona Cardinals, their draft grade, what did you give them?
Are people going to get real mad because spoiler alert, you shared your grades with me and you weren't too critical on anyone?
No, but I don't know what you did.
I think that I'm probably going to try to be a little more, combative with you.
You're the bad cop in this situation.
Well, I mean, doom and gloom is just much more exciting than anything. as I start my podcast movie here, for those that are unaware, I always watch a movie during the podcast. So let me fire that up with no sound. The Cardinals, I'm gonna go with a B minus.
Okay. Why is that? Because I gave them an A minus. I saw this draft pretty successful for them.
I just felt like with all the talk about what could happen at 4 and all the assets that they could add and all the things that they could do, they stick there. They go Marvin Harrison Jr. And if we fast forward 10 years into the future, is Marvin Harrison Jr. the best wide receiver out of this draft class? Maybe. Chances are he's not, just strictly probability. And if you can jump, go down 5 or 6 picks, and pick up a Neighbors or pick up a Rome or something like that, and restock a little bit, then there was just so much talk, that it was just kind of like, I think maybe a little underwhelming for me. I love Max Melton, so that was a great pickup for them. Darius Robinson, maybe it was just because of the defensive players in this draft class just weren't upper echelon as they have in years before, that I'm just kind of meh about him. But I mean, I just think that they went chalk, right? They did what they had to do. There's just, I'll put it to you this way. There's nothing that they did that really worries me. Like when we're going to talk about a team in your division, I'm looking at what they did and I'm like, whoa, holy shit. Like that's like, uh-oh type of situation. My team too, right? Well, we play the teams in your division. Nothing the Cardinals did worry me.
Yeah, and see, for me, when you talk about all the talk that something was going to happen at 4 or maybe some of their other picks because they had a ton of picks within the first 90, I was kind of sitting on the other side of the fence when it came to Arizona. You've traded around so much, especially last year, that you've acquired all these picks. At one point or another, you have to take blue chip talent. Like that's at the end of the day, you have to. And when you look at the receiving room of Arizona, it's just so piss poor that if you can get the potential number 1 wide receiver in this draft, or if we're talking about 5 years down the road, he could be a top 5 receiver in the league, and get him at 4. I think it's something that you have to do. Yeah, the Darius Robinson pick, I think this is probably the starting range for him. I still like it, and I like the team fit for him because they needed a lot of help on the edge. And those top 3 guys versus Latu and Turner were all off the board, and Robinson was the next guy up right after that. So he made the most sense to be next up, and with the edge help that they needed, it made a lot of sense to pick him there. Max Melton, I do like. He's just a little bit early for me in the second round at pick 43. So it's a little early for Max Melton in my taste. And then Trey Benson in the third. You know how I feel about Trey Benson. I know you have James Conner there, but he's not this explosive speed back that Trey Benson is, with excellent vision. Now that you have the 1-2 punch with James Conner with a lot of power, and then James Conner gets hurt a lot. He's not a healthy guy. And now you have Trey Benson, who could be a certified number 1 in a year or 2 years. I think it's a great pickup. A couple of these middle of the road picks, Isaiah Adams is a little bit of reach. Tip Raymond's a little bit of reach. I don't see the need for. Of course, you need backup tight ends and whatnot, but in the third feels a little bit rich for me when you have Trey McBride, who's one of the better tight ends, top 13 tight ends in the league. But then you go down to round 4 and you get Adrian Taylor Demerson, Xavier Thomas, excuse me, and then you still pick up a developmental tackle in Christian Jones, who was being mocked closer to like the 4th round. I like a lot of the pickups that they do. Again, I gave them an A- because they filled out the needs that at premium positions, and they got players I liked, right? So there's going to be a bias there of players I like in the specific spots, or even just steals, right? Dadrian Taylor Demerson that's probably the right range for him, but then Christian Jones, a little bit of a steal for me, and then Trey Benson, roughly around that spot, or maybe even the second round for me is where he should have gone. So I get the B grade when you're looking at it from that perspective, but again, for me, I wanted them to take all the blue chip talent, so I totally understand where you're coming from, though. The Atlanta Falcons. So this is the one, and I was surprised. So this is usually the one everyone's giving a D minus, an F, really low grades on. And I didn't really give them a super high grade. I'm going to be alone on this, being even higher than a D. I give them a C minus. Yes, the Michael Penix Jr. thing is going to weigh everything down. That's going to be very clear and obvious. How I kind of graded out is I started from round one and been like, okay, if I'm only looking at round one grades, what am I going to give him? Okay, I'm giving an F. Okay, Rook, where am I going to give them? Okay, I'm going to bump them a little bit because I really like Rook. And so I start bumping up the grade or I lower it depending on where guys are drafted. Atlanta took a lot of my guys. Rook Ororo, JD Bertrand, who I had as like my linebacker too. So they took a lot of my guys. Braylon Trice went exactly where we're supposed to go. Brandon Dorless, interior defensive lineman / defensive end. Not sure if he'll actually play defensive end, just because of his size and speed. To me, the only really confusing pick that holds the entire draft down is the Michael Penix Jr. pick, which I know the conversation is, oh, well, there's an out in Kirk Cousins' contract in 2 years, and you can go ahead and move on from him, and Michael Penix can start in 2 years. But if you're going to do that, and this is my quarterback 3, and he's my quarterback 3 to like start immediately, not sit for 2 years, and be like 27 years old when he's first starting. It just doesn't make any sense to me. They're trying to follow like the Green Bay method of drafting a guy in the first round, but this is pick 8. Not in like the mid 20s. This is completely different to me. So again, Atlanta, I'm giving a C minus too.
I like what Atlanta did with Michael Penix. I think they took Rook way too high. They also traded up to take him too high, which is an awful use of your picks. The Falcons are going to be good the next 2 years. They're not going to have an opportunity to draft this high again. Kirk Cousins is going to be really good. But if he's not going to be healthy for OTAs. So who's taking all those snaps? He may not be healthy for the first couple of weeks of training camp. So who's taking all those snaps? And what if he has a little bit of a setback in the preseason? Who's taking all those snaps? Michael Penix. And then Kirk comes back and they win 10 or 12 games this year. Okay, they're in the back half, the back 20. They win 10 or 12 games, they're in the back 20. I actually don't hate that they identified Michael Penix as the player that they wanted to draft and move forward with. And I'm going to go ahead and chuck the conventional wisdom with everything that happened here and the way they did it. I was actually pretty okay with the way they went about it. So I just think that one injury setback to Kirk Cousins and your Super Bowl aspirations are completely out the window with this team if you're going back to Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke or whatever you're doing. So I don't hate it. Right. He's going to get a lot of work in the offseason to see where he's at and what he can do. And, Drew Bledsoe goes down and Tom Brady never gives the job back. And Tony Romo goes down and Dak Prescott never gives the job back. So there's a lot that can come of this. I think this grade could be a big fat F 3 years from now, and it could be a big fat A+ 3 years from now. So I'm not going to do you got to give it 3 years bullshit that everybody wants to do. But this one is definitely going to look different a couple years from now, and in a really good way or a really bad way. Frankly, the 49ers had a terrible draft a couple years ago, but with the last pick, they found their starting quarterback. So if you nail the quarterback, nothing else matters.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't give it a grade. I'm going to go C+.
Okay, cool.
I hate trading up for Rook. I hate giving up assets to trade up for him there. And I like him too. But at 35, no thank you.
When he was probably going to sit there. I mean, I don't see another team, especially with the assets that were sitting there as well. Johnny Newton, Braden Fisk, like these guys were already sitting here who were both ahead of Rook for me. And I had Rook really high, but Rook was my 3. So the only other guy is actually Braden Fisk was ahead of him. So that's the only other guy I would have seen as like, maybe I would have taken him, but he maybe doesn't fit in Atlanta's scheme. So they really wanted Rook. And if they had some type of inside knowledge that someone was going to take him, I get it, but there were still a lot of other options, even if you sat at your place. The Baltimore Ravens. Go ahead and start this one off.
I gave the Ravens an A. They had one of the higher grades for me. Nate Wiggins, I know we kind of dropped him a lot in some of the stuff leading up to the draft, but when you got Marlon Humphreys and you got Kyle Hamilton, Nate Wiggins' speed, he cycles right in with that defense. I know the 49ers were super interested in Rosengarten, thinking that he could start at right tackle for them as a rookie. Obviously, you see the idea there. Devontae Walker, you and me mocked him in the 3rd round, I think, in our 3rd round mock that we did, go into play for the Washington Commanders with his boy Drake May, and then TJ Tampa. Obviously, like I mentioned, we all wanted to know why this man slid, because I saw him as high as the 1st round of the 49ers in people's mocks. So I just think they nailed multiple. Nate Wiggins starter. TJ Tampa could be a starter. Rosengarten can be a starter. Devontae Walker could be really good. They're just hit. And when you're in when you're at the upper echelon competing with the Kansas City Chiefs every year, this was a super important draft to them. They have to nail these picks. So I think they did a good job.
Yeah, this is my one of 2 A+ grades. So Nate Wiggins, obviously, this is like right around the range he should have gone. His skill set alone is probably corner 1, but with the injury concern, his weight concerns, he has a couple of things that about him that are really, really they're concerning. And taking him at the back half, that's where you take guys who have concerns or they have a lot of upside. That's exactly where you take these guys. So taking Nate Wiggins at pick 30 is exactly perfect. Rosengarten was on, who was it? Mel Kiper's, one of Mel Kiper's 1st round mocks. He was getting into the 1st round. So Rosengarten at the back of the 2nd is not someone that we mocked there, but apparently the NFL was a lot higher than we were. Adisa Isaac, probably one of the better stories in the league. The Athletic did a really good piece on him very recently. About his siblings and them being nonverbal and what he wants to do after the league. And so they did a really good piece on Adisa Isaac, probably immediate starter coming in. Tez Walker, again, we, just like you said, mocked him in the 3rd. I have him in my top 10 of receivers, and he goes in the 4th. And TJ Tampa, another potential 1st round guy that you're getting in the 4th. So it seems like, and the thing with Baltimore is they're so good at drafting. That's what some of my grades come into play too, is they're so good at drafting that I can't question some of it so much, because they seem to hit and hit and hit and hit and be able to develop these guys to be really, really good players. Justin Matabuke was not this like top perennial guy, but then he developed into it because of the coaching and the staff, and they turn these guys into really good players. So that kind of factors in a little bit. Baltimore's a really good drafting team, and they took a lot of guys that I rank up a lot higher than where they took them. So that kind of gives credence to my A+ grade. And then the Buffalo Bills, I gave Buffalo a B-. The most puzzling, there's a couple real puzzling things to me. So I like Keon Coleman. I think he fits in really well with Buffalo. The problem is I have A.D. Mitchell ranked above him. There was a bunch of weird stuff during the draft about his attitude problems or his character concerns. And so it seems like Keon was going to be their guy. But what's puzzling is not only who was on the board, but you trade back with Kansas City to give them Xavier Worthy, which you already did the same thing when you gave him Patrick Mahomes. And then now you're giving Xavier Worthy, a team that seems to beat you and beat you and beat you and beat you in the playoffs. And, Josh Allen's a 2-time Super Bowl winner potentially without Buffalo sitting there. The 49ers are a 2-time Super Bowl winner without Kansas City sitting there. So if Buffalo doesn't make all these trades, like what's the difference that we're making here? And then they trade back one more pick with Carolina. So Carolina can grab Xavier Legette. Cole Bishop in the second is wild to me. I don't see it. A couple of these guys that I didn't see going this high, I went back and watched some film on, and Cole Bishop does not look like a second rounder at all. I get the need, especially losing your safeties and a lot on your defense. Dwayne Carter is a huge upside guy. Picking him at the back half of the third round is okay to me. I actually kind of like that pick, especially he's being compared to guys like Adigizua. And then fourth round for Ray Davis, big fan of Cedric Van Pran in the fifth. That's a starting center to me like today, and he's going in the fifth. So that one's a little wild. I'm not sure why he goes that low. So I gave him a B- because I like the picks. I'm just not some of the picks. I'm just not sure why we're taking him in some of the positions.
Yeah, I'm at a B- on the Bills. I'm not going to fault them. I'm going to look at their process and not the teams they decided to trade with. You know, they trade back, then they trade back again. With Carolina, right? And that Carolina takes their wide receiver, right? That's what they did. They traded back twice, didn't they?
Yep.
They traded out of the first and they traded back again. So they add picks and they add stuff back to their draft cabinet. This is a team that had to lose a lot of players in the offseason to get back under the salary cap. They take their player anyway. If they're taking Keon Coleman at 31 and or whatever their pick is, if they're taking Keon Coleman and the Carolina Panthers are taking Xavier Legette, then Xavier Worthy's sitting there for the Chiefs anyway. So I'm not going to fault them for moving back. The Ray Davis pick is cool. Cedric Von Pran was a guy that I was looking at in the second and third for the 49ers. So to get him in the fifth is a steal, in my opinion. The Cole Bishop thing, when you have such a glaring need, sometimes you're forced to make the pick, and Cole Bishop is really like a high floor player, which is funny because then in the third they go with Dwayne Carter, who's a super high ceiling player. So they kind of they went weird like thought process on second and third, but they needed a safety, and if they believe in their guy, I'm a big believer, like my team did. When you believe in your guy, if it's 15 to 20 picks too early, as most experts think, but you believe in your guy, just take your guy. Now, is Cole Bishop Kyle Hamilton? Absolutely not. But if you think he's going to play both safety positions for you and start, then take your guy. And then being able to get Cedric, like I said, in the fifth, that dude, he might be a starting center. He might be the first player off the bench at 3 different positions on the offensive line. There's just a ton of like talent in that player, and they can play him at a couple different places. The rest of the picks, I don't know anything about. I'm not going to pretend that I do. Obviously, my analysis here is really going to be top 100, top 125. So, just a B- from the Buffalo Bills for me, especially since Keon Coleman, there's other players there. If he's your guy, he's your guy. But man, he's an interesting wide receiver in today's game. So,
yeah, he's your boom or bust, right? Because his contested catch rate is better than anybody else's, but his separation rate is horrible. His route running is very sloppy. So depending on what you want to do with him and how you're going to use him is definitely going to dictate how well he does in this league and how he develops. So right now he's not ready to be a 1, but he's going to have to quickly develop to turn into that. And the Carolina Panthers, you want to go and take this one?
Yeah, this is like vanilla ice cream to me. This is like a C, right down the middle. Okay. Xavier Legette, okay. Again, if you identify your guy, take your guy. I'm cool with it. I didn't have him ranked super high. I know with the wide receivers and the offensive tackles and the cornerbacks, I jotted down like a top 15. And maybe I just didn't pay much attention to Xavier as I should have. Jonathan Brooks, I don't even know if he's contributing to this team this year with coming off an ACL injury. Trevin Wallace is like, for a weak ass linebacker class to take a linebacker in the third round, especially this one when there's so many other needs you have. I mean, I like Jatavion Sanders, so I'll give him credit there, but all 3 of their picks were kind of head scratchers to me. I'm not sure if Legette is a game changer for Bryce day one. I actually think Jatavion Sanders might have a bigger impact for him first year. And you're not drafting for this upcoming year always, but I don't know if you noticed, but they got 2025 mock drafts out already. And do you know who's picking number one in the 2025 mock draft? The Carolina Panthers, because they expect them to suck again. So
Yep.
when you're going out there and trying to get something to change right away for your young quarterback, a rookie coming off an ACL injury and a linebacker that I really don't know anything about is just vanilla ice cream to me, man. It's a C.
Yeah, I actually liked the draft. I gave him a B. Now I had Leggett over guys like Keon Coleman, and I had Xavier Leggett over like Xavier Worthy and a couple other guys. He was like top 7, 8 for me. I think he was 8. I think he was right behind Tez Walker. Super high ceiling type player. Man, it's hard not to imagine he's not like manufactured touch like Debo is, but the way that man's built and his run after the catch ability being so big is really impressive. His route running just needs a little bit of work. Jonathan Brooks I see why we're drafting him because the Miles Sanders thing didn't work out, but wasting a second round pick on Jonathan Brooks when you could have gotten closer to like maybe backing up Miles Sanders with a Ray Davis in the 4th, or a Trey Benson went in the 3rd, who I think is a superior back. Blake Corum went later as well. So there's a couple of guys who I have ahead of Jonathan Brooks, and we're taking him in the 2nd round, which is where he was being mocked to anyways, even to the Cowboys, which when they took Jonathan Brooks, I was like, cool. I was like, we can get Trey Benson now, and then we ended up not taking him anyways. The Trevor Wallace
Zeke,
pick.
though.
yeah. I don't even want to talk about it yet.
Unfinished business, he says.
Hey, the 1,200 yard season for Zeke is incoming. Trevin Wallace makes sense to me because he's a rushing linebacker like Frankie Louvu was, and they just lost Frankie Louvu. This is like the immediate Frankie Louvu replacement. That's pretty much all Trevin Wallace is at this position here. And then the Jatavion Sanders is like the steal for me out of this class for Carolina, easily going in the 4th. When we had this guy going in the 2nd, I could have in mid-2nd, he could have even gone as high 2nd with how good he potentially is, and having a bunch of tight ends go in front of him that I just do not agree with. I gave them a B. I like the draft. I think there's a couple of confusing spots, like the Jonathan Brooks thing is weird. I don't mind the Trevin Wallace thing. Xavier Leggett going that high. You got to take your guy where you're going to get him. So, and getting Bryce more weapons has to be the most important thing right now. So I'm giving them a B. Moving on to the Chicago Bears, if I can scroll down. There we go. A very small draft class, but this is an A for me. You get Caleb Williams. Obviously, you have the number 1 pick from Carolina. He's the best quarterback in the class, best player in the class, potentially super high up, upside. Romo Dunze, wide receiver 2 for us. Kieran Amagaji in the 3rd is, to me, perfect for a developmental tackle. He was like right outside the top 10 for my tackles, and going in the 3rd, not going any higher than that, because I saw Kieran like kind of late 2nd, mid-2nd sometimes, and I'm like, that's way too early for a kid who played at goddamn Yale. And then going back, the thing that's a kicker for me is going back and trading back into the draft, because after the 4th round pick, they were done. Trading back into the draft for the 5th and getting a super high ceiling guy in Austin Booker, who's super bendy, super athletic, but needs a lot more work and probably should have went back to school. Getting him in the 5th is great because you can develop the shit out of him behind a couple other guys, and hopefully it works out for him. So I'm giving them an A because of just, you got a couple of immediate impact players in the first 2, and then 2 potential starters in the next 3 years in the other 2.
Yeah, I got 2 grades on this one. I'm going to go ahead and give your draft analyst on this podcast an F because you used the phrase, the thing that's a kicker for me, and didn't mention them taking a punter with their 4th pick. So that's a fail because I thought you had something nice teed up there. Man, with such a small draft class and not a lot of picks in this draft, do you maybe wonder with a wide receiver room of Keenan Allen and DJ Moore already, do you trade out of that number 9 pick and add a 2nd and a 3rd, or a 2nd and a 4th, and then take one of these guys 18 to 25 anyway? Maybe you do, But in terms of value and all this stuff, we have to give them nothing but an A. But it's definitely something to consider with all the capital they've lost over the years now for some of the moves they've made. You really, when you have these small draft classes, the Rams have found out about this, the 49ers have found out about this. You have to hit these picks. You can't just be wasting picks when you don't have a ton. So it's an A for value all over the place. I gotta say, I'm glad they took the offensive tackle from Yale. That way we weren't tempted to, just because that's kind of a little suspicious to me. But we'll see.
And then the Cincinnati Bengals. Go and take that one.
I am going to. I'm going to go answer my front door. I'll be right back. I guess you'll take the Cincinnati Bengals.
Cincinnati Bengals going with a B+ for me. Taking Amarius Mims in the first is a huge home run because of the potential that he has. He's only played 8 games. He has a ton of potential. There's some injury concerns because playing at 340 pounds and 6'8", and being that nimble when you see athletic specimens like this, most of the time when they're draft busts, what do you see? Do you see them having injury concerns? So that's a little concerning for me, but Marius Mims is still in my top 5 of offensive tackles and went exactly where he probably should have. Chris Jenkins in the second, run stuffing defensive tackle. Jermaine Burton in the third, talented wide receiver to go in the second, that has a lot of off-field concerns, attitude concerns, character things with him that push him down the board to the middle of the third round. So honestly, Jermaine Burton could probably fall in even further. I like the talent of Jermaine. He's like a top 15 wide receiver for me. But again, you have a lot of concerns there. And then Eric All in the fourth, you're getting somebody who I know that you guys signed, Mike Gesicki. I get it, but this is another true receiving tight end that can help Joe Burrow out. We're talking about weapons on weapons on weapons. So yes, you have Jermaine Burton. Yes, I know you have that young slot kid as well over there. You have T. Higgins. You have Jamar Chase. You have all those weapons, but giving him Mike Gesicki and Eric All, surrounding him as much talent as possible is going to be incredibly important for Joe Burrow, and getting safety blankets around him and additional tight ends is really important as well. The rest of the picks, we're not talking about immediate impact players or even super big developmental guys. So again, B+ is where I'm at. Again, my favorite pick of the draft is probably going to be the Amarius Mims pick. And then the steal is probably going to be closer to Jermaine Burton. So I went B+ with Cincinnati.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I liked a lot of what they did in the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds, just as much as they did with their first 3 picks. Jermaine Burton, good wide receiver. I went running back in here, and now I'm out of breath. That's embarrassing. It really just comes down to how you feel about Amarius Mims. That's kind of where this comes down. Everybody knows what Chris Jenkins is going to bring to the table, Michigan guy. I think that I can't imagine that's who they wanted at 18, but the board shook out weird, especially with J.C. Latham going so early. So it really just comes down to what type of player he's going to be. So seems about right.
Yeah. What I was just saying is just the Amarius Mims things is he is a super high ceiling guy, but he could be an immediate bust because of some of the injury concerns, because he is like 340 whatever pounds, and he's also 6'8", and he's super nimble. And when it comes to those guys who are athletic specimens, what's like the number one thing and concern for them? It's injuries. That's why they become busts. It's not their talent, because even in the small sample size of 8 games, he's really, really impressive, and his technique is a little sloppy, but you can see it's there, and it's stuff to polish out. But there's definitely a lot of risk there at 18. As much as I like the player and being in my top 5, I want to say being in my top 4, it's still a lot of concern there.
Yeah, I mean, Eric All had a lot of injury concerns in college also, and PFF hated Josh Newton. So it's just, I mean, what are we talking about though? 5th, 6th, 7th round picks. These, there's going to be a lot of good teams in the NFL this year. A lot of teams. There's going to be players that were drafted this year that aren't even going to make the teams. So
Absolutely.
Super interesting. Super interesting dynamic this year with the NIL money in college and a lot of good players staying in school. Quinn Ewers, and
Yep.
not coming out just because the money to be made in college, leading to this draft not having a ton of draftable players in the back half of the draft. So,
Yeah. Looking at the way too early mocks too. Man, next year's going to be a crazy defensive class. It looks like from the first glance. I'm like, dude, it's like the polar opposite of this class. Like first 15 guys or first 14 guys are all offensive guys, and a single digit amount of defensive guys drafted in the first round. First time that's ever happened. We might get a complete flip next year with the talent it looks like that's coming out. Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to keep an eye on throughout the year. Cleveland Browns. What do you give Cleveland?
I gave Cleveland a C. I mean, what are you going to do when your first pick is like number 54?
Yeah.
Mike Hall Jr. The problem with this pick is I think this is boomer bust for him. This doesn't seem like a Chris Jenkins pick where just throw him out there. Now, obviously, this is 20 picks later than Chris Jenkins went. I understand that, but like I find a hard time seeing a pathway to Chris Jenkins not being in the NFL 5, 6, 7 years from now.
Yeah.
I can see Mike Hall being out of the league in like 4 years. I could see Mike Hall being a superstar in 4 years. Tough to have that much variance with your first pick in the draft.
I feel like with defensive tackles, you always see elder defensive tackles are one of two things. They can pass rush and stop the run, or they can stop the run. You don't see like older pass rushers, or excuse me, older defensive tackles that are pure pass rush guys like Michael Hall is. And I feel like that's kind of all he is at this point, is just a pure. You're never going to see him in the backfield making a play unless someone just forgets to block him on a play. He's not going to make that. He's not going to make that type of impact. He's going to be like a third down specialty guy. But to get him in the second's a little early. Yeah.
I will say when analyzing the draft, you can't just analyze the picks that are made. You have to analyze the total amount of compensation, and because every year each NFL team comes in with the same assets. They have the same amount of picks, they have the same amount of salary cap. To be able to draft a boomer bust player like Mike Hall Jr. and then a Zach Zenter, but then to take a 5th round pick that probably wasn't going to be very valuable and swapping it for Jerry Jeudy, there's part of that that's good. Obviously, they don't have a 1st round pick that's tied up in their quarterback, who maybe go down as one of the biggest busts of all time in terms of that trade. So to get some value out of a late round pick when there isn't much value in the draft in the 5th through 7th rounds this year, and bring in a wide receiver that could start from day one, I do like that. I like Jamari Thrash. So
yeah,
it just, with your first pick being a player like Mike Hall, that's just very could be great, could be bad.
Yeah. And then Zach Zenter going in the 3rd is okay. I would have liked him to go a little bit later than this, especially some of the guards that were on the board could have gone before him.
Well, then Von Prawn goes in the 5th. It's just
it's too much for me. Jamari Thrash, just super manufacturer touch guy.
Yep.
I gave Cleveland a C+ with this one because of what Michael Hall could be and what Jamari Thrash could immediately bring to the team as a wide receiver 3 and the manufacturers, the sweeps, the screens, the potential deep threat. C+. And with the Dallas Cowboys, I gave a B+ to my team. There's a lot of these players where I would have liked other guys to go, right? And I think that's the immediate thing where when I'm looking at my team, I want to take somebody else. I want to take someone else besides Tyler Guyton in the 1st. And there's a lot of issues with Guyton, right? Just to give you an example. So my dad texted me 2 days after the draft. He said, I see every other analyst and I see every other page say they really love the Guyton pick, and you are like the only person that doesn't. Why do you not like the Guyton pick? Why are you alone on an island on this? And I said, well, I don't think I am. I said, and if I am, here's the problem. One, This is supposed to be a developmental starter, and he played right tackle, not left tackle. He already had issues in the in pass rush. Excuse me, yeah, in the passing game, he already had some issues. He's light in the lower half of his body. He's really sloppy with his hand placements. He's only won really off of athleticism in college. And we're taking this guy and we're saying, hey, protect our very, very expensive quarterback. Again, this is a guy who's supposed to be developmental and you're supposed to protect him on his blind side. So I'm going to trust it because it's the Cowboys, and the past like 3 offensive linemen that we've taken in the first have been all pro guys. Tyler Smith, Zach Martin, and Tyron Smith. So I'm just going to have to give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. The Marshawn Kneeland pick, I like. This is the immediate DeMarcus Lawrence. Once he's gone, Kneeland's going to go ahead and step in. I think this is not going to be someone you're going to see a total of a lot of double-digit sacks, but you are going to see him in the backfield quite a bit with his power profile. I like the Cooper Beebe pick because he has center flexibility. I hate the Cooper Beebe pick because Christian Haynes was still on the board. That's my only issue with with picking a guard in the third when the best guard in the class is still sitting there. But again, I get it because of the center flexibility, and we need center. Maurice Luafau is my linebacker 3, so this was like my favorite pick of the draft at a need that we really need. And then Kalen Carson in the 5th, to me, is insane. I don't see how Kalen Carson goes in the 5th round. This is closer to a beginning 4th round guy to me. So for me, this is the steal, and the Maurice Luafau pick is my favorite. So we attacked all of the needs, and we got players who I think have a lot of high upside, and some of the players who have a high floor, like Cooper Beebe and Kneeland, I think both have high floors.
Where are you guys going to play Carson at? Are you going to play corner or safety?
I think Carson's going to play in the nickel, and I think he's going to play safety. But because of he's a talented player on a team like Wake Forest, he always shadowed the best player consistently. So even when he was going against like Keon Coleman, he was shadowing Keon Coleman in that Florida State game the entire time, pretty much. So whether he was in the slot or on the outside, he does that game to game out. So that's why I like him in the 5th, is he seemed to play everywhere. So I think he's going to provide a lot of support in that nickel role.
Yeah, I did a lot of, obviously, Cowboys 49ers centric pod, so I did a lot of research on your guys' picks to try to give it a fairly like good grade that would stand on its own. And one of the things that I noticed was Kalen Carson was a 2nd round pick mocked last year, the year before, the too early mock draft. This was a guy that could go in the 2nd round. You trade down and pick up a 3rd round pick, and you still get the guy that you guys wanted in Tyler Guyton. I wanted the Niners to take Tyler Guyton, so I like the pick. Marshawn Kneeland, for a player that you don't need to impact next year, it's a good pick. Cooper Beebe, I had him ranked a little bit higher than you, but obviously behind Christian Haynes. I was originally giving you guys a B- because I hate the fact that you didn't fill your biggest hole on your team in this draft. But then I thought about it, and I was like, well, the value of where they got the players and who they got and the moving up and down the board and everything that you guys did, I think it's an A- to me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. My only gripe with my number one gripe with the Cowboys draft is not the Guyton stuff, because like you brought up, trading back in the 1st is really what gives Tyler Guyton a little bit more like, okay, I get it. Like, not only did we pick Guyton, but it allows us to pick Cooper Beebe as well. Is the Ryan Flournoy pick, the wide receiver out of the Southeast Missouri State, when Brendan Rice was on the board still, that really like irked me a lot. That bugged the shit out of me. So that really pissed me off. Like, that was the one thing while still watching for the Cowboys picks, and that pick came in, I'm like, what the fuck are we doing when he's like best available player, and the next best available player like after that is some fucking nobody? Like, what are we doing? So that's the only part where I was like, dude, this is fucking ridiculous.
Bro, Jerry Jones ain't drafting Jerry Rice's son. Get the fuck out of here. There ain't no way.
Denver Broncos, you want to go and take that one?
Yeah, I don't know what to do here. I guess it's a B-, C+ for me. I think out of all these quarterbacks that we're looking at, Bo Nix is the one that's going to be like the most Sam Darnoldy. Like the dude might
Yeah.
be around, but he's going to be on a backup role by the time his second contract rolls around.
Mm,
I really like the Jonah Ellis pick. I really like Troy Franklin in the fourth.
fourth.
I
Yep.
think that's
Get his
great
teammate.
value there. But it really just it depends on um, what you think of Bo Nix. And at number 12, even though we knew this was going to happen, but what are you going to do? You're not taking a player at 12 that's going to change your season next year any more than quarterback. And
Yep.
with Penix going 8, I really thought that Penix was the quarterback for the Broncos with Sean Payton. And so what are you going to do when he goes 8? So I guess I'll settle
Yeah.
in at a B minus just because they filled the quarterback. I like the next 2 picks they got. I love Troy Franklin in the fourth, but yeah, I don't know about Bo Nix, man.
Yeah, I give him a C plus, and a big part of it is Bo Nix there at 12. Obviously, I had Bo Nix rated maybe, maybe a little bit higher than you did, but it's still at 12 is just way too high. I mean, there was a lot of quarterbacks in the draft who just went a little bit too high, in my opinion. So that's like kind of the whole thing that's holding the entire grade down, just like you were talking about. Jonah Ellis in the third could be really, really good. Troy Franklin in the fourth is ridiculous, and he should have gone a lot higher than that. Chris Abrams-Drain, cornerback, I saw going in closer to like high fours, late threes. And then Audric Estime I know is like a cult favorite running back for a couple of groups of people really like Audric Estime. So for a running back room that seems to have a lot of trouble staying healthy, grabbing another one to go by committee, it just kind of makes a lot of sense. But again, Bo Nix is really the main thing that's holding this entire class down. So the C plus there again, and I get it. You don't have a second round pick, and all the quarterbacks are flying off the board, and the next closest quarterback is like what, fourth round, Spencer Rattler, and he's not starting for your team. So I get it. It's just unfortunate with how the board fell for them. Detroit Lions.
Detroit was a B minus for me.
Wow, really?
Were you higher or lower?
I was a lot higher.
Here's my issue. They needed wide receiver. They didn't solve that. They drafted a safety that they're going to play at running back. And like Manu is like maybe he'll be something great, but I don't know about that pick. Now and the thing about it is they already got tackles, so they're fine, right? But
yeah,
I just back-to-back corners first and second. I'm just not exactly sure. Like, I think they could have really used a wide receiver at one of those picks.
okay. Yeah, I initially gave them a much higher grade than this. Not much higher, but I gave him a higher grade than this. But I gave him an A minus. Because Terrion Arnold at pick 24 is really low for Terrion Arnold, in my opinion. He probably should have gone way higher. Ennis Rakestraw Jr., I'm pretty sure I said in one of the mocks before that Ennis Rakestraw is just one of Dan Campbell's guys. He feels like a Detroit Lion, so it kind of just made sense. Sion Vaki in the fourth. I hope he plays safety. I hope that they just announce him as a running back because that's how he was listed initially, and they didn't know how to announce him. I hope they play him as safety because I like him a lot more safety than the running back position. So I hope he plays there. Mekhi Wingo, super high floor guy. Both the defensive tackles from LSU that got drafted this year are both, I think it was his name, Jordan Jefferson and Mekhi Wingo, really high ceiling guys that can develop into something nice. And then Christian Mahogany in the sixth is fucking ridiculous. That is the biggest travesty to me that Christian Mahogany goes in the sixth round. This is a second round guy to me going in the sixth. It might be close to my steal of the draft at that position there. So I gave him an A minus because of you're solidifying your cornerback room. That is not good. That was the Achilles heel of your entire defense. Solidifying it. Terrion Arnold's going to be immediate starter. Ennis Rakestraw might be close to an immediate starter. If not, he might be starting midway through the year. And again, some just either backup help at running back or safety, or shit, they might say, hey, we have an athlete with the new kickoff rules that we're going to go ahead and just use you in the kickoffs. And then just two really, really high ceiling guys in Mahogany and Wingo. So I gave him an A-. The Green Bay Packers, who had a shit ton of picks, as it literally takes a little bit to even scroll through all of them, I gave them a C. With all the picks that they had, some of them were really confusing. Jordan Morgan at 25 was probably where that conversation was starting. I had a lot of other guys in front of Jordan Morgan. I get it. He's a really high floor talent, and you need somebody to play that left tackle position to protect your quarterback in Jordan Love. Edgerrin Cooper, potentially, I guess, maybe playing edge. I don't see edge. I don't see Edgerrin Cooper as an edge at all. And I'm not even the biggest fan of him. I think he's a developmental linebacker. I know you liked him a lot more than that. But you have linebackers, and you have Mike linebackers, and you have off-ball linebackers already and on-ball linebackers. You kind of have your linebacker room filled up already at that point. So picking him in the second, it's a little puzzling. Javon Bullard at that position in the late second is good to me. Marshawn Lloyd, another pick that I like, but then you just go like another linebacker and Tyron Hopper, and then it's just a bunch of just shit, and it's just roster fill at that point. I talked to you and I said, hey, don't be surprised if they package up a bunch of these picks and try to go up in the first or something like that. I'd much rather them try to move up with a lot of these than pick some of the roster fill that we got out down here. And I know it's a really young, talented team. But that's when you should be maybe trying to take more blue chip talent and taking those picks and moving up. You have that ability because your team is so young. I like the Michael Pratt thing in the 7th round. And then who tweeted out and said, I can't believe Kalen King is still available in the 7th. He was almost Mr. Irrelevant. Kalen King was awful last year, so I don't know what we're even talking about. So, yeah, again, it was a C to me.
Yes. Man, they had all these picks. They could have moved up. They could have done something really, really exciting. Jordan Morgan at 25 is kind of like, woof. I think when they took the pick, I told you on the live stream, well, thank God, that way the 49ers can't take him. You know?
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
There's a lot that they could have done. I just don't think they needed this. I don't think they needed a bunch of like roster blah. You know what I mean? Like I like Javon Bullard. Obviously, they got a need at safety, guys from Georgia. Yeah. Marshawn Lloyd at running back. Okay, whatever. Do you need a running back in the 3rd round when you have Josh Jacobs? It's just,
you already have your second string guy too. So.
I love Edgerrin Cooper, and then you follow it up with Tyron Hopper. I'm just a lot of it just seemed like, I don't know, it seemed like very Madden-y to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like It's like when you're drafting in Madden and you're like, all right, I'm not re-signing anyone over the age of 28. I'm just going to let all those guys go. And now I need 6 guys at these positions. They're never going to play. They're just going to be backups, but I need the roster. So I'm just going to go, okay, linebacker here, running back here, offensive tackle here. That's kind of what it felt like to me. So,
right.
I always look at it like the season they had last year. What from this draft class stands out to you that's going to help them take the next level? Maybe Bullard, but now that's almost a 3rd round pick there. We'll see. If I was an expert, I'd be in a front office somewhere.
Right. And then we have the Houston Texans. Houston didn't have a ton of picks, especially really in the top half. They didn't really have a lot, but I still gave him a B-. Drew's guy, Kamari Lassiter, going in the 2nd is where he should have probably gone. Blake Fisher in the late 2nd. I love that pick for them. Kalen Bullock in the 3rd and Cade Stover in the 4th. All guys who I think are all going to make immediate impacts. You're not going to look at Cade Stover at the end of the year and be like, oh, wow, he had 600 receiving yards last year. No, this is probably like a 250-yard rookie tight end, but he's a really, really good blocking tight end. And when your starter is Dalton Schultz, who's really, really good in that regard and receiving, you need someone who can back it up with blocking when you have two tight end sets out there. So Cade Stover immediately comes in, and his blocking grade is I know isn't phenomenal, but if you go look at the film, I don't know where he's missing blocks or he's missing an assignment. So I think he's pretty phenomenal on that end. So I think they filled out a couple of really good roster spots to a team that looks pretty fucking stacked already. And you're just adding more young talent to it. So a B- for me.
Yeah, to me, excellent value on Lassiter. Big fan of him. There's two years in a row I've been massive fans of two corners. You know, Ringo last year and now Lassiter this year. I think you're throwing a little too much shade at my boy Cade Stover, though, man. He's a third down assassin. He did this already with C.J. Stroud at Ohio State, so the man might go for
that's a good point.
It might go for 25 to 30 catches next year, but shit, 20 of them might be for first downs, and that's extremely valuable with a young quarterback. There's nothing they did here that like blew my socks off, but there's nothing here that they did that I hated. I've seen a lot of people giving them A's.
I don't know about that.
I just it was a good draft for them. This is a team that needs to get better, and they were a year ahead of schedule, and now they're adding a player like Lassiter to a really good defense, offensive tackle depth, adding a safety, Cade Stover. I like their off-season grade is very, very high.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So when you have a massive offseason, when you make massive upgrades in the offseason, you have very few holes. And I think that they've packaged this offseason free agency and the draft together nicely, and look out next year.
Definitely. What about the Indianapolis Colts? What do you give them?
I give them an A minus.
Okay.
Mostly on their first two picks, because they bucked conventional wisdom with Latu, and they took him, and he was the best edge rusher on the board, and they got him. And you get A.D. Mitchell at 52. And the thing about it is, I didn't blame the Buffalo Bills for not taking A.D. Mitchell, because they just got rid of Stephon Diggs. They just got rid of the drama. But this is a young team. You got a young quarterback. You need a little swag, and A.D. Mitchell can provide that. So I can't say that I know too much about their fifth-round picks. The offensive tackle from Pittsburgh, I looked at him a little bit because the tackle class was so deep that I went out to about 10 or 15 players. But really, Latu there at 15, I loved it because we were pounding the table that he was number one. And then A.D. Mitchell falling and them just coming up and doing what they need to do to take an impact player. It really just this whole thing just kind of relies on if their quarterback's healthy, because Gardner Minshew's gone, and we'll see. This is a draft that could prove pretty pivotal to them if they're going to take the next step here with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, this is also an A- to me. Latu and Mitchell are obviously the big parts of that. I'm not gonna act like I watched a whole lot of Goncalves from Pitt. But Tanner Bortolini, I did watch a little bit of, because there was from Cowboy side of things, there was whispers of maybe us being interested in Bortolini in around this range of the fourth round, especially around this range of picks. So I watched a little bit of him. This is, to me, he's a guy who's a developmental center that can walk in about year 3, probably be a starter somewhere on that offensive line outside of tackle, because he doesn't have the exact length to play that. But I think this is a guy who could be an eventual starter on this team, with a Indianapolis offensive line that's been good for a while. And they're just going to kind of just reload with it, with their offensive tackle and center picks. And again, they're immediate impact guys. And their GM he's a drafting guy. He loves doing that shit. You could see that draft season is his favorite season. So, and give him the benefit of the doubt with some of the picks he's made in the past. So this is definitely an A- to me. And then moving to the Jacksonville Jaguars, I gave them a B-. The Brian Thomas Jr. pick, moving back, and then still getting your guy and getting the return that you did, I really, really liked. Mason Smith in the second is super high to me. I don't like that one at all. I mentioned 2 defensive tackles from LSU. I didn't even mention Mason Smith. I mentioned Jordan Jefferson and Mekhi Wingo because those are the guys I was familiar with. Mason Smith, not at all, because he was the guy that was buried on the depth chart to me. I don't like the pick. Jarrian Jones in the third. He was in my top 7, 8 corners. Very, very, very good slot corner. What makes it a little bit confusing to me is the fact that he's a slot corner and you already have a player to play the slot already at this point. So Jarian isn't very good on the outside. He was burned on the outside quite a bit over at Florida State. I hope they still use him in the slot where he could play his fullest potential. And again, the only other one I know of is the Jordan Jefferson pick, who's just super high ceiling guy. So too high for Mason Smith. I hope that they use Jarian correctly, and then Brian Thomas is good, but then everything else is like, okay, not super familiar with the rest of these guys. They're taking him kind of high compared to who else is on the board as well.
Yeah, I was a little bit higher on this. I gave him an A- because I absolutely love that they picked up 2 mid-round picks for Brian Thomas. Trading back, they still get their guy. The Mason Smith pick is stupid, but that's just them filling a massive need that they have. And then the Javon Foster, you got Walker Little and their other tackle are both free agents in 2025. Cam Robinson, is that who it is?
Yeah, Cam Robinson.
You're probably not paying both those guys, so you get this guy in, it fills in for injury, a little swing tackle this year, and then ready to take over at right tackle next year. So that's good, future planning. And then you can't forget that they took a 6th-round pick in a weak draft and flipped it for Mac Jones with a quarterback that is definitely, there's already been some talk that they're a $215 million extension for him, Trevor Lawrence. I'm not 100% sure about that. He needs to come out and ball out this year. And if he doesn't, then you already have your bridge quarterback on the roster. So, frankly, when you identify a player that's your guy like Brian Thomas, and then you're able to pick up 3 other picks and still get your guy, that's great value. And that's
absolutely.
That's using your assets. That's using what you have to increase your assets. And I'm a big fan of that. So A- for me.
Get it? And then moving on to your favorite team, the Kansas City Chiefs. What do you give Kansas City?
I would give him an A-, unfortunately. Xavier Worthy is probably, in my opinion, too high for him, but in their offense, he fits perfectly. So that's a perfect fit. The Kingsley pick, I really, really like that. I don't have a thought on the Jared Wiley pick. I didn't really look at him too much, but then Jaden Hicks at safety, getting him in the 4th, I really like that. But, they added an element to their offense here that's been missing since they traded away Tyreek Hill. Although I shouldn't say it's missing because they've won 2 Super Bowls since they traded away Tyreek Hill. So it's really hard to be critical of anything they do at this point. They had no wide receivers on the roster last year, and they were still insanely successful and won a Super Bowl despite losing in the overtime. Being behind in overtime, they won the Super Bowl. But I mean, I like the offensive tackle pick, and Xavier Worthy is, he ran the fastest 40 in combine history, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I gave it a B+. Worthy too high, obviously. If he goes to a place like Buffalo, then it's like a really, really lower grade because Xavier Worthy can't play in the cold, most likely. So I have a lot of questions with Worthy, but in that offense, I think it definitely is okay. Kingsley Sumatia is like my tackle 10, and to be a developmental tackle and get him at the back end of the second is really good. You and I actually mocked this the opposite way. We had them taking like Guyton in the 1st and then taking a wide receiver in the 2nd. So we had this the opposite way, which is they ended up doing it anyways. Totally okay. I haven't looked into Jared Wiley too much, but getting another tight end on the roster when Travis Kelce is getting older, even though he just did sign an additional extension. Jared Hicks in the 4th is a great value. Hunter Norzad, another one of those guys I looked into at center because I thought Dallas was potentially going to pick him maybe in the 4th or the 5th, if they picked up a 4th. I thought this is a guy that maybe we would have picked up. And funny enough, it's a pick from Dallas that ends up giving them Norzad. So I think that Kansas City has one of the best interior offensive linemen in the league. Um, they're three front right there, the center guard situation. One of those guys ends up going out. They're aging. They don't want to pay them. I think Hunter Norzad could step into one of those situations. He's not going to play center most likely unless Creed goes down. But he could play guard as well. So I give it a B plus. The only issue is just Wiley in the fourth, and then Worthy that high. But again, it's just about Kansas City getting them. So they're still a B plus, and I can't really say shit about shit because it's Kansas City. Who gives a fuck? Like they're gonna do whatever the hell they want to do, and they're still gonna go as far as they want to because they have number 15. The Las Vegas Raiders, and get this, I'm going to go ahead and give the Raiders an A draft. The Raiders actually having a good draft is bonkers to me. Brock Bowers at pick 13. We had him going later. A lot of people had him going higher. It's kind of hard to mock a tight end, especially as good as Bowers. Bowers isn't seen as a traditional tight end. We're probably going to still see Michael Mayer play a lot of that role, but Brock Bowers is going to be on the field 24/7. He's going to end up catching screens, catching underneath, catching over the top. He's going to do whatever the hell he wants. And he's going to be that ultimate safety blanket for, I guess, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, whoever's starting at that place. So Brock Bowers 13 is just best player available. Jackson Powers Johnson, the best center or the second best center, however you want to see him in this draft, going in the second is really good. DeMar Glaze, I'm not a fan of going in the third, but Demetrion Richardson, developmental speed corner, shoots out of a cannon. Tommy Eichenberg is a pure linebacker to use on passing downs, third down linebacker, not for rushing, but for coverage. He's a really good coverage back. So linebacker. So I really like that what they did, especially again, those first two picks really kind of sway my opinion heavily. And then I like the development they got in the fourth and the fifth round moving forward, especially a team that needs, that needs a lot of offensive line help, that needs more weapons. They need corner, they need linebacker, they need it all. And I think they filled out a lot of those needs in this draft with good value.
I feel like the Raiders might have been thinking about quarterback at 13, and that obviously didn't work out for them, so they took Brock Bowers. Definitely. It's a curious pick to me. I'm gonna give him a B plus. I feel like maybe they had a different player they were targeting, and then they just went best player available. I know that you just painted a pretty picture of Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers all over the place, but this comes back to me with their head coach they have and the offensive coordinator who was fired by the Bears, who couldn't make it happen with Justin Fields and the Bears that were there. And obviously, we aren't that high on Justin Fields. I just wonder if they're going to be able to utilize Brock Bowers in the way that they need to make him worth the 13th pick for them. Jackson Powers Johnson at 44 is awesome value for them. I'm not a super big fan of Glaze, so little bit of a disagreement there, but I love Richardson in the fourth. I actually watched a lot of him because of the 49ers needing corners. So it's a B plus to me. But if they come out and utilize Brock, the Falcons absolutely did a disservice taking Kyle Pitts because they've absolutely done nothing with him. Absolutely nothing with him. So that's an F of a draft pick for me. So if Brock Bowers comes out this year and he doesn't do nothing, this is an F draft to me because you could have taken a different player. But much like the Michael Penix draft where I said in a couple of years this could be boom or bust, it's the same thing with Brock Bowers. If they utilize him correctly, if they do what they should be doing, if you had an offensive coordinator that everyone was excited about over there, then I would be a lot higher on this. I just hope that they're going to be able to make it work because there's not a ton of two tight end stuff that NFL teams run. So hopefully they can make it work out for them. Otherwise, It's just a typical Raiders pick.
It's true. All right, the Chargers. What do you have, the Chargers?
I'm going to give the Chargers an A-. I actually really like the Chargers draft. I showed you the text from my Chargers friend. They hated the Joe Alt pick. Doesn't make any sense to me. I love the Ladd McConkey pick.
Yep.
We knew Harbaugh was going to take a Michigan man, and they took Junior Colson.
Yep.
I do give the Chargers an F for not taking Blake Corum because that sucks. But they just
it's fair.
they need a lot, man. They have their franchise quarterback, and that's about it.
Yep.
And they get Brendan Rice, so
yeah, and I gave him an A, just a little bit higher than you, and I think just everything you already highlighted between Alt and McConkey and Colson, and then Rice, but also Cam Hart was really, really, really high on my cornerbacks list. I'm a huge fan of Cam Hart, and going in the 5th is way lower than I expected Cam to go. So, a lot of value, and I would say that LA just kind of picked guys where they were supposed to go.
Mhm.
All in the top 5, McConkey top of the 2nd, Colson top of the 3rd, but then Hart's a steal, and then you get Rice, which is a steal. So I really like what they did. Again, they're getting an A, definitely for me.
The Chargers kind of look like they ran the PFF mock draft generator like 1,000 times and then just took
Right.
whichever picks popped up the most. That's just who they took, which that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying anything negative of them. It's just with the team that needs everything, I don't blame Chargers fans for being underwhelmed by an offensive tackle there, especially when they could have taken Malik Neighbors. But Rashawn Slater was absolutely terrible last year in the running game, and that's what Harbaugh wants to do. So I don't blame him for going out and getting a tackle there.
Yeah, so Joe's probably going to play the right. And then the Rams, I gave the Rams a B+. Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, Blake Corum, Cam Kinchens, all really, really good picks. And then they have a ton of picks below that. KT Leviston is probably the only one I'm super familiar with in the 7th. Pretty close to Mr. Irrelevant there at that spot. I just, with the limited amount of stuff, they did all of their damage there in the first 3 rounds, which most teams do anyways. So I really like everything they did at that point with the B+. What I am a little confused about is Corum in the 3rd. Kyren Williams did a lot of damage last year, a ton of touchdowns, a lot of yards. He was really good. Corum in the 3rd's a little head scratching with some of the players that were still on the board. So, on the note of the Rams, did you see the call to Braden Fisk? Have you seen that clip yet? It's pretty cool. So the clip of Braden Fisk, it's the GM calling him and telling him, "Hey, we're gonna draft you." And obviously he's like, "Man, I'm super excited." He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna hand you off to the coach." And McVay gets on. He goes, "Oh, we're so fucking excited. Just we're fucking fired up over here." And he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna play with Verse again." And he was like, "Yeah, we're actually trying to get him to come over here and call you instead of the GM. He's actually on his way now, and he doesn't know why." And so Verse walks into the room, and the coach at that moment, and the coach, Sean McVay goes, "Hey, talk to your new teammate Braden Fisk." And he was like, "Fisk," and then he was like, "What's up, Verse?" He goes, "Ain't no way, no, ain't no way." And he looks over the coach. He goes, "I'm so fucking proud of you," and they just start fucking crying. Yeah, it's a pretty cool clip. So again, B+ for me with them.
Yeah. Super social media viral clip aside, the only small thing that takes us from an A- to a B+ for me here is that they did give up draft capital to move up to 39 to take Fisk. They had just sat at 52. They could have had Hall. If they believe in their player, they believe in their player, but they gave up a draft pick to move up and get this guy, so he better hit.
Yeah. The defensive line's looking pretty good, huh?
Yeah, we'll see if it matters.
Moving on to the Miami Dolphins, what do you give them?
Sucker. This is a C+ to me. I love Chop. I really did, but 21 is just like, whew,
well, they have
really high when you have other needs. And but the Jalen Wright in the 4th, I love that. That's good value there. I did see some Malik Washington. The thing is it's Mike McDaniel, so he'll be able to use some of the speed and stuff that they have. It's funny. I see Chop and I see Speed, and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. No wonder Mike McDaniels loves him, even though he doesn't have much to do with the defensive side. But
right.
we'll see. That's going to be an absolutely phenomenal pick or an absolutely terrible pick. Again, I don't think
Yep.
Chop Robinson is a middle of the line player in the NFL 8 years from now. He's either booming or he's out. He's either a perennial all-star or he ain't in the league anymore. So we'll see. And that's a hefty thing to do at 21 when you have a lot of other things. Patrick Paul's okay. I wasn't a big fan of him.
Yeah.
I didn't have him ranked very highly on my tackle rankings that I did. But again, like I said,
same.
I'm not in a front office anywhere. So
yeah, Chop when there's other guys on the board is kind of confusing to me between the centers that were there, literally every center that was sitting there. Plus you still had Jazon Newton sitting there, and you have a big need at that defensive tackle position. And even with the picks that you made, you still have a need there at those positions. So a little puzzled from that one. Patrick Paul in the second, not a huge fan of that one as well. But like you said, Jalen Wright, big fan of. Malik Washington in the sixth, I'm a big fan of. And then Mo Kamara, I actually like out of Colorado State in the fifth. I think that's perfect development. I like him there.
the only thing though is they traded a 3rd round pick away for a 4th round pick to take a running back when they already have 2. And I'd forgotten about that. So we'll see. I mean, most of these drafts, everything relies on your 1st round pick, and generally when your 1st round pick doesn't make it, and there was a couple guys that were drafted that are really just like boom or bust here.
Yep. And then going down, dude, website's going crazy. Minnesota Vikings. I'm gonna go a B+ for the Minnesota Vikings. And you get McCarthy at 10. You didn't have to give up that pick 23 to go ahead and go get him. And then you get a top 3 edge rusher in this class in Dallas Turner as well in the 1st round. Kyrie Jackson, the 4th, I think is really good. Really good value. So I think my whole grade depends on these 3 right here. This could easily be a B- because of the picks that they traded away, and the fact that they only have like a 1st rounder and like a 5th rounder or something like that next year is a very alarming for Minnesota. So JJ McCarthy better be pretty damn good, or you're gonna be looking really fucking stupid by the end of the year.
No, man, they're gonna restock that whole draft cabinet when they trade away Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, because no wide receiver plays from Minnesota. Randy Moss, Stephon Diggs. Now next is going to be Justin Jefferson. They're all going to be gone.
I gave it an A- here. The main reason for that is they were looking at potentially trading up those picks to go get McCarthy. They get him at 10. I love that.
Yeah.
Dallas Turner, everybody and their mother had him going 8 to the Falcons, and they get him, 9 picks later. That's great. I love Kyrie Jackson. I think he's like, he's super long. He's super physical.
Yeah, definitely.
He has that Richard Sherman, Tyreek Woolen type, as long as he doesn't stay too handsy and can stay away from the penalties, can be really, really good. I don't know about the whole kicker thing when your draft cabinet is so, I mean, at that point, just trade that 6th out and, pick up a.
Yeah.
Are you still there?
I am, but
your face disappeared. It says El Gato.
Oh, my camera stopped working.
Maybe you're being attacked by. Isn't that cat Gato?
Yeah. There we go.
Hey, he's back, ladies and gentlemen. The attractive face of the 2020 podcast.
You're the athletic face. Whoever fits the bill for you.
Freiermuth.
All right, New England Patriots. What do you want to go ahead and give them?
There was talk in the beginning of the draft season that Drake May was better than Caleb Williams. It obviously did not shake out that way, but getting him at 3 is great.
Yep.
Polk is, he's definitely a wide receiver. Washington is known for really good wide receivers, and I actually like Caden Wallace. There was a couple of tackles that were taken in the 3rd round that I was kind of like, I was a little weary of and wasn't a big fan of, but Caden Wallace I'm a fan of. and Javon Baker in the fourth. I really like that pick also. So,
dude, how do you not get excited for Javon Baker when he goes up to his press conference and he's asked about what impact he's going to make for the team, and he says, "Get your popcorn ready. I make people in wheelchairs stand up." How do you not get excited for that guy? Fucking, I'm gonna go draft him in my dynasty draft now just because of that. Fuck, man.
I like a lot of what they did. You know what I mean? It's a new era for them. Have you seen all the Keon Coleman stuff that's been on social media?
Yeah, I have.
Him walking around in that yellow jacket.
He's fucking funny.
He's hilarious, man.
Tom Izzo? No, Macy's, man.
Yeah, he's like, I'm about to go get clearance. I gotta go get 4 or 5 more. They're on clearance. They're like $89. And then he's like walking out of the cold room and there's all the smoke. He's like, oh, holy shit, we gotta play the Undertaker's music right here. Turn the lights off. This is like, it's like, did this guy go to Highlands High School in Sacramento? Like, is he not used to all the cool shit that these teams have? Like, that's kind of what it seemed like to me. So not to hijack this by talking about Keon Coleman, I apologize. So with the Patriots, we're going to go ahead and this is a solid B for me. Drake May, they fill the need. Jalen Polk, they fill the need. Caden Wallace, they fill the need. Layden Robinson is definitely a guy that they took in the 4th round instead of Cedric Von Prawn. So, okay.
Yeah. Yep.
But hey, at least they didn't take him in the 1st like Cole Strange.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I gave him a B+. Just because it's obvious that they're trying to surround Drake May with weapons, and I appreciate that. Between the Polk pick, who has, Drake May obviously has some questions of his accuracy just randomly. He can make some of the craziest throws on the run and while he's escaping the pocket and all this stuff. And then sometimes he just makes really dumb errors. And Polk has a really, really wide range of catchability when the ball's thrown. His catch radius is massive. So getting him there in the second, I think, just makes a lot of sense for him. And then Javon Baker is a manufactured touch guy. So I think that with the weapons that they're surrounding May with, I think that I like it a little bit more. So giving him a B+ just kind of makes sense a little bit for me. And then the New Orleans Saints, I gave an A- to. And almost everything is predicated on those first 2 picks. Talisi Fuanga at 14 when we had him going potentially 10, to the Jets originally, or maybe, he even had talk of even higher in the top 10. Kool-Aid McKinstry, my corner 1 for me. So that's getting him at pick 41 is crazy. Spencer Rattler makes a ton of sense for a guy who needs the development and is going to go ahead and sit behind a quarterback that he could potentially take over for because the quarterback who's starting is not very, very good. So everything's predicated on the first 2 picks, but then you throw in the potential quarterback that is going to develop in the future as well. And I really like the draft.
It's an A to me. You get Kool-Aid at 41. That's awesome. One of the F brothers at 14. That's awesome. Rattler in the 5th. It's great value, especially considering Derek Carr's a trash can. And Derek Carr's backup is Jake Haener, who's famous for being the quarterback at Fresno State. So, it's an A to me. I mean, it wouldn't have really mattered. You knew you were going to get a good tackle at 14, so you don't get much credit at taking a tackle at 14 because you knew you were going to get one. And I don't think you really get that much credit for Kool-Aid falling to you, but it doesn't matter. You just drafted 2 starters way below their original ADP. So,
yeah. And they traded up, go get them, right? I mean, so it just makes sense.
Him getting past 31 was definitely a decision.
Yeah, right. New York Giants, first New York team.
It's a B.
Okay, yeah.
I mean,
I give a B+.
You got to take Neighbors, obviously. They could have got a little bit of higher grade for me if they took a Rome instead, because it would have made us look like geniuses.
Right.
A lot of talent on the board at pick 47, and they go safety. That's definitely a decision and kind of a weaker safety class. But I love Andrew Phillips, so I'm all about the Andrew Phillips thing.
That's funny because I like the pick at 47 because it's a weaker safety class, and this is safety 1 pretty comfortably, and they lose their starting safety in free agency. I think this just is filling a need that they needed to really address in the draft between the safety and the wide receiver and their corners. I'm not a huge fan of Andrew Phillips, so going in the third is his range, so I'm okay with that. And then Theo Johnson in the fourth, when you have a lot of questions about your starting tight end, if he's going to retire, maybe if he's even if he wants to play. If,
Darren Waller is literally a scam. He's an absolute scam. What a bum.
Yep. So I like the pick in the fourth. And then the New York Jets, the other New York team, I gave a B- to. I like Fashanu at 11. I'm glad they went Fashanu over Bowers. I get it. You have your 2 starting tackles already, but one of those guys are not going to play at one time or another. He's going to play left. I'll guarantee you this. He's going to play left tackle and right tackle this year because both those guys are not going to play at one point or another, and he's going to have to fill in, whether it's injury or rest or whatever it is. Malachi Corley in the third, I really like because he's a manufactured touch guy, and with Aaron Rodgers being there and you want the ball out as quick as possible, makes a ton of sense. Braylon Allen, I'm not a huge Braylon Allen guy. It's fine in the fourth, I guess, but his vision fucking sucks. He's a power back. It's fine, whatever. If you want to use him on goal line situations, fantasy managers aren't going to be too happy for poaching away those touchdowns. And then Jordan Travis in the fifth is just a potential developmental guy who I don't think won't ever really start, but he's there at least.
I hated this draft. I gave him a D.
Oh, really?
I gave him a D.
Shit.
Yeah. They drafted a player that if everything goes the way they want it to, won't even play at 11.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Corley is like, okay, whatever. Like, okay, sure. Like, Braylon Allen sucks. Jordan Travis sucks. Isaiah Davis sucks. Like, what did you like? I'm just like, they're just fucking with Aaron Rodgers at this point, aren't they? Like, you drafted a tackle that's not gonna play. Like, hello, why didn't you just take Brock Bowers? Like, what are we doing here? Like, now hey, listen. Assuming your tackle gets hurt and he has to play, congratulations. But you why did you go sign him then? Like, why did you go sign him if you were going to take this guy 11? You knew there was going to be tackles here. Why did you go give him the money? Everything about their offseason doesn't make sense. And from what I heard, their head coach was absolutely furious about the tackle pick here at 11. So,
oh, wow.
Not that their head coach, my boy, is going to be probably lasting very much longer as their head coach. But, yeah, that's a D. That's my second word. I mean, the Falcons are a little better, but I think the New York Jets had my worst draft grade.
What about the Philadelphia Eagles?
Oh, that's an A+, brother. That's an A+. Yep, that's an A+. When you get Cooper DeJean, who was my number 1 corner on the board, who I think could have gone 13, you get him at 40, and you get Quignon, that's an A+.
Yeah, between those picks alone, Jalix Hunt to me is a little bit high in the third, but I like Shipley, a receiving back at the fourth, and Nia Smith is developmental in the fifth.
And Jeremiah Trotter?
Yeah, the legacy pick is in the fifth.
Let's
it's
go.
It's definitely good. I gave him an A. And then Johnny Wilson, the sixth, is a guy who maybe could have gone a little bit higher, but with these questions with the size, is he a tight end? Is he a wide receiver? Is definitely going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye out in Philly. So, yeah.
I love the Cooper DeJean CeeDee Lamb thing. That's very exciting to me.
So they don't. And what's interesting to me about Philly is they took these 2 corners who are going to be their very obvious 2 starting corners next year. But this year, they can't really – they're going to have guys who are maybe going to be sitting on the bench like James Bradbury that they can't get rid of because of money-wise, who are going to eat up a ton of cap space, but you can't play him.
He ain't making the team, bro. I don't think so. I know the dead cap hit sucks, but you just punt, move on.
Yeah, I guess so.
I have this dream of Cooper DeJean just like shutting CeeDee Lamb down twice this year, and your dad having an absolute meltdown because he wanted him so bad, like pick sixes and all this shit, and your dad just like having a literal freak out because he wanted Cooper DeJean so badly. If the 49ers are taking him at 31, I was getting him the jersey. I was going to send him the 49ers Cooper DeJean jersey. So
yeah, it definitely should have gone a hell of a lot higher. I don't care what anyone says. Even if he is a safety, it should have definitely gone a lot higher than that. I don't get it. Pittsburgh. This is my other A+. Easily my other A+.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Fatanu, Frazier, Wilson, other Wilson, McCormick. I mean, those guys alone. We're talking about starter. Like, these guys are all like starting guys, whether it's year 1 and year 2. I know Peyton Wilson has a lot of injury questions and concerns, but McCormick, I know you know that I'm a big McCormick guy, and getting him in the 4th is great value for him.
Did you hear
the
Peyton Wilson ACL thing?
No, I didn't.
So the reason why he fell to the 3rd is he doesn't have an ACL in his right knee.
I heard that he actually might have a really short career, but then that makes sense too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a bunch of immediate impact guys that come onto the field, and Pittsburgh just knocked it out of the park, man, with a bunch of guys that have a bunch of flexibility with Fatanu, guard tackle, Frazier, just your pure center, all, your what is it? All-state wrestling champ, Roman Wilson, your underneath slot guy that you really need to pair along with George Pickens, Peyton Wilson, your starter, and then again Mason McCormick, who I just think is going to be a monster in the league.
Yeah, I went A- here. I just felt like they could have done a little bit more to help out Russell Wilson / Justin Fields, who's apparently going to return kicks. Did you hear that today?
Yeah, I did.
That was wild. And they declined the 5th round option on Najee Harris today. Fatanu, starter, Frazier, like, I get it all. There was a lot of impact wide receivers sitting there that could have changed something for them this year. And I'm not exactly sure if Roman Wilson is it's not a Roman Wilson thing. It's I don't believe in George Pickens thing, just to be clear. I really like Roman Wilson.
Yeah.
So, and this is just me nitpicking and picking a different grade than you did, because it was an excellent draft for the Steelers. Unfortunately, both their quarterbacks suck.
Yeah. Your favorite team?
Go ahead.
Okay. Or is it just going to go all the way down to the bottom? That's cool.
You know what the thing about this is? I had in my mock drafts, I wanted us to take a wide receiver, and then I wanted us to take a corner, and then I wanted us to take an offensive lineman. And we took a wide receiver, we took a corner, we took an offensive lineman. I love the safety pick. I think that the wide receiver from Arizona is being slept on a little bit. I think the Isaac Guerendo pick was stupid. Like, the dude, I don't believe in him as a ball player at all. I actually think the other wide receiver we took, the other running back we took, is way better than him. But I really like Dominic Puny. I really like getting the safety there. Safety wasn't the thing about it is wide receiver, corner, guard, safety. All those were needs. We filled all the needs. And the 49ers admitted that they only had you sent it to me, right? They only had 15 first-round grades on players. And then they had one of the guys that are really connected to them, Mike Silver, tweets out that they're taking Cooper DeJean. And then the 49ers admitted after the draft that they gave the 2 names to 2 different people. That way they could figure out who the hell was leaking shit. So the Cooper DeJean gets out and they fired the guy that leaked it. And then they take Ricky. So it's just one of those things where I've said this a couple of times now. They identified the player that they wanted. They spent the entire time on the phone trying to trade back to take him in the 2nd. Couldn't get anybody to make the trade with them. And so they just took him at their pick. So they identified their player and they took him. Because they reached a little bit, it's a B- to me. I really like Puny. Like I said, I really like the safety, and I really like Renardo Green. But man,
it's a B-.
The AD Mitchell thing, the Kool-Aid McKinstry thing, the Cooper DeJean thing. It's just like, I don't know how you don't have a first-round grade on Cooper DeJean. Unless they think he's a safety. And then maybe they just say he's a safety and they can get a safety in the 4th.
I guess. It's a B- to me. Ricky Pierce obviously way too high in my opinion. Renardo Green, there were some other corners on the board that I would have liked more than Green. I don't hate it. I would just prefer some other guys. He's a guy who gets in trouble on deep routes and he gets grabby on deep routes. I mean, you already have that on your team. You know, you already have a guy that he gets thrown at going deep and he's gonna, get a DPI and then they're gonna advance the ball. So if you already have that on a team, Ronaldo's a little bit better, most likely. I really like the Pooney pick. The Pooney pick is home run, guard, tackle flexibility, especially on that right hand side where you guys actually need help. So I think he's an immediate starter. Like today, Dominic Pooney is going to start at one of those right tackle, right guard positions, I think. Mustafa, I've heard a lot about. I haven't watched the film on him yet. I'm meaning to go back to a couple of these guys to watch him. So I
mean,
haven't
he was
watched
a
that
free
one quite
pick,
yet.
so
Yeah, fuck off.
For those
Isaac Guerrero is like,
for those that aren't aware, that pick came from the Trey Lance to the Cowboys trade. That's why he's
I don't know what you're talking about.
so angry.
Hey, we should have just picked up his 5th round option. Or 5th year option. I'm just saying, dude.
Hey, I'm gonna put this out here now, though. Ricky's gonna be really good for us.
He probably is,
because
he probably is.
He is awesome at those deep crossers, and that's what Brock absolutely freaking loves. And he blocks downfield, and
he's fearless, dude. He's
the thing
truly
about
fearless.
The thing about watching A.D. Mitchell is I already knew the 49ers were never going to draft that dude because he doesn't want to get his hands dirty. Block. I'm like, man, when he ain't playing for us, I'd love to have him, but he ain't playing for us. So
yep, yeah. The Guerrero pick is just like he's a combine monster. He's probably not going to be very good. And yeah, Jacob Cowing is a guy who's gotten a lot of hype as like a late round sleeper. And get him in the 4th, I think, is the value that you should be getting him at. So I think he could be pretty damn good for you guys. So yeah, so I went B-.
You know, Pearsall played with Brandon Ayuk.
No, I didn't know that.
You know who their quarterback was?
Where did Brandon Ayuk play again? Playing in Arizona, right? It's Jaden Daniels, huh?
My guy, Jaden Daniels. God, I hope he's good because I've talked so much shit in his favor. He might be terrible. 40 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He better be good.
Seattle Seahawks. I went with a B for the Seattle Seahawks. Byron Murphy, Christian Haynes, 2 of my favorite players in this draft. The only unfortunate thing is you don't have much past that. Like, you don't have a 2nd round pick. So it's like, okay, like you couldn't really make any damage there. There are some linebackers outside of Trice Knight in the 4th to go ahead and go grab. There was guys outside of AJ Barner in the 4th to go ahead and go grab. Like, there was other needs, in my opinion, to go ahead and grab at positions that you needed and you didn't address them. But the Byron Murphy stuff and the Christian Haynes thing is what's going to go ahead and solidify as a B for me. I really love those 2 picks. Christian Haynes, my number 1 interior offensive lineman, my number 1 guard. And then Byron Murphy, my number 1 interior defensive lineman, like by far, not even close. So, but the rest of the picks, I'm head scratching about. I'm just kind of confused. Just because of the guys who are on the board, not the positions they were filling, but just the guys who were left there. Just a little worrisome. So a B.
Yeah, B+ for me. It was pretty common knowledge that they were absolutely in love with Brian Murphy. You get a day 1 starter in Christian Haynes in the 3rd. That's awesome value. They're a terrible tackling defense, and Trice Knight apparently was the best tackling linebacker in the draft, people said. And then AJ Barner fills a hole left by Will Dissly. So they had things they needed to fill, and they filled the holes. Unfortunately, their quarterback's not good enough to take them to the next level, especially with how much better the Rams, 49ers, and Cardinals got in this draft. So tough for them, but maybe they would have taken Penix at 16. Obviously, they never had a shot at that.
Absolutely. Tampa Bay. What'd you give Tampa Bay?
This is a B- for me. I like the Graham Barton pick just because he plays all over the offensive line, and I think that type of flexibility is needed. The Chris Braswell thing, I think it's funny they have him listed at edge there because I guess I don't see him really as an edge, but or I guess maybe he is edge. That's the problem, is we're having this conversation about a guy taking it pick 57. You can't have that type of conversation with the guy taking pick 57. Bucky Irving at 4 is my favorite pick that they made because it's something that actually helps them. You sign your quarterback to a big old extension, you bring your Hall of Fame wide receiver back, and then you go, kind of bleh with your first couple of picks. That's, this seems like you love this draft, don't you?
I do love this
draft.
Of
course you do. This seems like a Jacob Taylor draft.
Why? What's wrong with this draft?
I don't know. It's just, man. I guess it's good value all over the place. Graham Barton's cool. Braswell's cool. So Smith is cool.
Listen, they had their center retire, right? And they need to fill that void. Graham Barton comes in and fills it. They need edge help, guys to get into the backfield. Chris Braswell fills that role. He was my edge 6 in this class, and he went, I think, exactly where he should have gone, maybe even a little bit higher. Tyke Smith, I haven't done a whole lot of homework on, but I know that on YouTube, I don't know if you're familiar with the franchise guy. He had he had Tyke Smith as his safety 1 in this class. So when I haven't done any research on him at all, and so I put a little bit of credence there. I got to do a little bit more research on Tyke, but Jalen McMillan as coming in as the 3rd wide receiver immediately to be the underneath guy, I think is super, super important for Baker. And then Bucky is great value in the 4th right there. So I like the draft a lot. It's an A-. Apparently it's a me draft. So I'm a huge fan of it. The
Shocker.
Tennessee Titans. Tennessee Titans.
I don't know what to do here, man. T'Vondre Sweat is awesome at 38. It's good value for a guy that got a DWI. I'm just saying,
crazy.
He probably would have gone higher, right? Like he falls because shit. I mocked him in the 1st originally with mock draft 2.0. I think.
Yeah,
I think this draft really just. Honestly, I could give this draft an F. I could. J.C. Latham at 7. I could give this draft an F. But again, I'm going to give them credit for identifying their guy and bucking what everyone else was doing and just saying, hey, J.C. Latham's our guy. We're going to stick it. You know what the thing about J.C. Latham is I thought he was a guard. And this isn't the Skoronski thing that we did last year either. Like, I thought he was a guard. And if you're taking him at 7, you believe he's like left tackle potential. Can't take him at 7 if you don't think he's left tackle potential, in my opinion.
I guess, yeah. Yeah, I gave it a C+. Just because Latham's too high for me, but again, you go out and you get the guy that you want. But I think that there's the offensive tackles that were there available for you were way better. And then T'Vondre Sweat has way too many questions about character stuff and the DWI stuff. And he's boom or bust. He's either going to be out of the league or he's going to be a long-time starter. There's only one Vita Vea. He's Vita Vea or he's out of the league. There's really no in between. Cedric Gray in the 4th, I'm not a huge fan of because he's more raw than a 4th round guy. I think he's closer to like a 5th round pick. I don't think he was worth, and it's an early 4th as well. So I give it a C+ because I'm not a huge fan of some of the picks and where they went. Yeah, they addressed the needs that they needed to, but there was other guys sitting there, in my opinion, that they could have taken. So C+ for me. And then the last team to go over is the Washington Commanders, who I gave an A- to.
That's too low, dog. That's too low.
That's not too low.
That's too low.
Well, it's too low because you take Jaden Daniels at 2. There you go. See? So fuck you, okay? Johnny Newton in the 2nd is crazy value. Mike Sanderstill is one of my favorite.
Great value.
Yeah, he's corner 6 for me in this class. Slot corner 1 for me easily. Ben Sinnott in the 2nd.
Slight stretch.
That's
the only reason they're not an A+.
Brandon Coleman as a guard in the 3rd, I'm okay with. Luke McCaffrey taking a flyer on him in the 3rd, the last pick in the 3rd. I think that's okay too. I like those.
He's a wide receiver 3.
Yeah, and that's exactly where he's going to step into, right? You already have a Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin. He's going to step in to go ahead and develop a little bit further and to go ahead and step in a little bit, step in with Terry McLaurin, who's going to help him out with the route running stuff. He's already a decent route runner. I think is going to make him a pretty good player in the future.
Stop putting all those ads up on our screen, bro. They ain't paying us.
I know. I don't know what the hell is happening, man. Just It's not me, I swear. All right, what do you give the shitheads?
It's an A-. I agree with you. I just love
All
Jaden
right, fuck
Daniels.
off.
Listen, I'm thinking about getting me a Jaden Daniels jersey, bro. I'm so convinced. I'm so thoroughly convinced.
About him?
Yeah, man. He can throw the football. People who are ignorant are going to think he's Lamar Jackson. He's just going to run all over the place. But the man can throw the football.
Yeah. That's why it's an A- to me. Again, you know how I feel about Jaden Daniels, but you get the guy that you want to get. I get it. It's why it's an A- and not like I'm being egregious and being fucking stupid and being like it's a B- because Jaden Daniels is a second round player. Like I get it. I get the potential. I even think that Jaden Daniels has a high floor. As a running quarterback. So staying healthy is going to be his number one thing. I'm just strike Mace there.
He's going to lead the rookie quarterbacks in touchdowns.
Total touchdowns?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think so.
It's not even going to be close.
I don't think so.
Caleb's going to throw like 24.
No, he's going to throw like 31.
Nah, I don't think so.
And he's going to rush for 7.
Caleb?
He's going to go crazy.
Nah, bro, come on.
He's actually, you just don't know this, he's actually Jalen Hurts, and he's just going to they're going to tush push every single time on the one.
That'd be wild.
Yep. DeAndre Swift's like, hey, I seen this before. Like, I know exactly what's going on. Like, put me in the backfield. I ain't going to touch the ball on the one. Don't even have to give me the ball. Just give it to Caleb. Bam. There we go. See?
Okay. Fair enough.
All right. So that's all of our grades, all 32 teams.